Welcome to Daily Papers, the podcast where we break down one interesting research paper every day. Imagine you ask your smart assistant a really important question, something about finance or maybe even a health concern, and it comes back with an answer, saying, "I'm 99% confident this is correct." How much should you trust that number?
That is the multi-trillion-dollar question, isn't it? As we rely more and more on AI, we need to know if they know what they don't know. It's not just about being right, it's about being honest about uncertainty. And that's exactly what today's paper digs into. It's titled, "Do Large Language Models Know What They Don't Know? Evaluating Epistemic Calibration via Prediction Markets" by Lukas.
It's a great title. Let's start with that key term, epistemic calibration. It sounds complicated, but the idea is actually pretty simple.
Totally. Think of your local weather forecaster. If they say there's an 80% chance of rain, you'd expect it to actually rain on 8 out of 10 of those days. If that's the case, they are well calibrated. Their confidence matches reality. Epistemic calibration for an AI is the exact same thing. When it says it's 80% confident, it should be correct 80% of the time.
And if it's not, you get big problems. A model that's constantly overconfident is dangerous because we'll trust its wrong answers, and an underconfident one is useless because we'll ignore its right answers. So the authors of this paper wanted to test how well calibrated today's top AI models really are.
But that comes with a huge challenge. How do you ask an AI a question that it couldn't have just memorized the answer to from its training data? If you ask it, who is the first person on the moon, it knows the answer and can confidently say so because it's a known fact.
Exactly. You need to ask it about things it genuinely doesn't know the answer to yet. So the researchers built a new test, a benchmark called Kalshibench. It's based on questions from Kalshi, which is a real-world prediction market.
For listeners who don't know, a prediction market is like a stock market for events. People buy and sell shares in the outcome of future events, like will movie X gross over $100 million on its opening weekend, or will candidate Y win the election? The key here is that these are questions about the future.
And this is the brilliant part. The researchers took 300 of these questions from Kalshi, but they specifically chose questions where the outcome would only be known after the AIs they were testing had finished their training. This is called temporal filtering. It means there's no way the AI could have cheated by seeing the answer online. It had to actually predict an unknown future event.
So they took 5 of the biggest, most advanced AI models out there, names like Claude Opus 4.5 and a futuristic-sounding GPT 5.2 X High, and they gave them these 300 questions. For each one, the model had to say yes or no and then state its confidence from 0 to 100.
And they even put an instruction in the prompt that said, "Be calibrated. If you're 70% confident, you should be correct about 70% of the time on similar questions." They literally told the models what to do. So how did they do?
They were terrible. The first key finding is what the paper calls systematic overconfidence. Every single model was significantly more confident than it should have been. The gap between their confidence and their actual accuracy was huge.
How huge are we talking?
Let's look at the predictions where the models were most confident, the ones where they said they were 90 to 100% sure. A well-calibrated model should be getting almost all of these right. But one model, GPT 5.2 X High, was only right about 34% of the time in that bracket. It was claiming near certainty and was wrong 2/3 of the time.
Wow, that's like a friend who is absolutely, positively certain he knows a shortcut and then drives you directly into a traffic jam. That's not the only bad news, is it?
Not by a long shot. The second finding is that most models failed to beat the base rate. The base rate is essentially the performance you'd get from a very simple strategy, like always guessing the most common outcome. If you're predicting yes-no questions and 60% of past answers have been no, you could just always guess no and be right 60% of the time.
So you're saying these incredibly complex, expensive AI models were often performing worse than that simple guess?
Exactly. Only one of the 5 models, Claude Opus 4.5, managed to do slightly better than just guessing the base rate. The others were, in a statistical sense, worse than informed guessing.
Okay, this is already looking pretty bad, but I think the most counterintuitive finding was about models that are designed to reason more.
Yes, the reasoning paradox. This was fascinating. Some of these AIs have special modes where they generate a long chain of thought before giving an answer. You would naturally assume that more reasoning leads to a better, more nuanced, and better calibrated prediction.
But it doesn't?
It makes it worse. The paper found that the models with enhanced reasoning were the worst calibrated of all. They became even more overconfident. It seems that instead of using that reasoning to challenge their initial assumptions, the models were just building a more elaborate story to justify their first gut instinct. It's pure confirmation bias, but generated by an AI.
So, why is this happening? Why are these incredibly smart models so bad at knowing what they don't know?
The paper suggests a few reasons. First, they are trained to produce correct answers, not to be honest about their uncertainty. The training objective is just different. Second, the process of fine-tuning them with human feedback might be part of the problem. We humans tend to prefer answers that sound confident and authoritative, so we might be accidentally rewarding AIs for bluffing.
Which brings us to the big picture. Why does this matter so much?
It matters because we're starting to use these models in high-stakes domains: medical diagnosis, legal analysis, financial forecasting. An AI that tells a doctor it's 95% sure of a diagnosis when its actual accuracy is closer to 50% is genuinely dangerous.
So, the big takeaway here is that accuracy and calibration are two completely separate skills for an AI. A model can be very accurate at recalling facts, but have no self-awareness about its own limits when faced with uncertainty.
Precisely. This paper shows that just making models bigger or making them think harder won't solve this problem. It's a distinct capability that needs to be developed on purpose. We need to train models for a kind of epistemic humility.
So, the next time your AI gives you an answer with extreme confidence, it's maybe wise to take it with a grain of salt and do your own research.
I'd say that's more than 90% likely to be good advice. That's all for today on Daily Papers.